Chapter 11, that's just by refreshing your background. In Daniel 11, the first two verses will summarize the Persian Empire, and the next two verses, 3 and 4, will summarize the Greek Empire. So the first 4 verses are a sort of a recap, if you will, of what we've already talked about. But then we have verses 5 through 35, and that's going to detail the tensions through the various dynasties of both the Seleucid Empire and which is the portion that Seleucus took from the original Greek Empire, and the Ptolemies. And that rivalry will, in effect, Israel finds itself sandwiched between these two struggling powers. And this is going to cover the majority of the time, what we call between the Testaments. Many of us have books in our library called Silent Years, which is scholars' attempt to summarize the history after the Old Testament, before the New, so-called silent years. They're not silent at all. They're detailed in advance here in Daniel 11. We'll look that over. And that's the part we'll take in this session. Verses 36 through 39 will introduce this character that's called the willful king. Again, an overlay from Antiochus Epiphanes. In chapter 40 to the end of the chapter 11 is clearly end time prophecies. What is confusing in this chapter is that verses 36 through 39 seem to fit both. On the one hand, much of what's said there fits Antiochus Epiphanes, which of course is historical. And yet much of it foreshadows, goes far beyond Antiochus Epiphanes, and foreshadows the final echo, if you will, of this super leader, this coming world leader that the world is watching for. So we'll sort that through, and we'll take the last 2 portions here as part of chapter 12 when we get there. But in Daniel chapter 11, first 2 verses will take us through the Persian Empire, which was Cyrus all the way through Artaxerxes Longimanus. One of the notable ones here is just before Artaxerxes Longimanus was Xerxes I. That was the king that was during the days of Esther. So the episode of Esther would fit in there. Artaxerxes Longimanus is a very important date, as we determined in Daniel chapter 9, because his decree is the trigger that Gabriel pointed to when he gave us this mathematical prophecy which details the exact day that the Mashiach Nagid, the Messiah, the prince or ruler or the king, makes his appearance on the donkey. So again, we'll see a recap of that in the first 2 verses. And then the next 2 verses will just summarize the career of Alexander the Great. And so we have the Persian Empire, and then the Greek Empire, because usually the Seleucids and Ptolemies are looked at as echoes of that original Greek Empire, and the 4 generals that divided up, of course, we've covered here. So, and it's the last 2 that we'll really focus on in this chapter. So let's get at it. Looking at it geographically, again, because I think it's important to get, Cassandra took the far west, Lysimachus took that portion that you and I would associate as Turkey, in Roman times called Asia Minor. Seleucus took the east, Ptolemy the south. And these 2, of course, are rivals, and what's caught right in between? Israel. And that's why this is such a dominant portion of Israel's history there. And the so-called 400 silent years are, in my view, a misnomer. But let's just jump in. We finally got here. That's the introduction. Daniel chapter 11, verse 1. Also I, who's I here? Also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Who's speaking here? No. Who is the guy speaking at the end of Daniel chapter 10? The messenger that spent 21 days fighting the prince, some strange dark creature called the Prince of the Power of Persia. Fought his way through. And he's going to announce 3 kings. So the speaker here isn't Daniel. Daniel's recording it. But it's the angel of chapter 10, whoever he is, where there's some scholastic debates as to exactly who he might be. It's not revealed who he is. But he's going to announce these 3 kings, Cyrus, Cambyses, and Darius Hispaces, the first 3 of that list that I showed you earlier. And so he apparently, what's interesting here that many people miss, says, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Who's the him? You first think it's Daniel. No, that's not what he's talking about yet. He's talking to Daniel. Darius, exactly. So apparently we have a basis to infer that the spiritual warfare that this personage was engaged in Daniel 10, served not only that he could get through to give the message to Daniel, that's the critical part of this, but he also apparently, part of that was to help confirm and establish, strengthen Darius. That was apparently in God's interest. And these ministering spirits, called angels, are at war. It's not just push an automatic button. There's apparently conflict involved. It took him 21 days. Remember, you reread chapter 10 when you get a chance. It wasn't until Michael came to help him that he could get through. That's why many of us stand away from assuming it's Jesus Christ, because he wouldn't have needed Michael to help him. It's obviously some very powerful angel, and Michael came and cast the deciding vote, so to speak. But this is the angel speaking. He says, and now I will show thee the truth. This is the angel speaking to Daniel. Got the picture? And behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. And the fourth shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. And indeed, it was their launching against Greeks in 480 BC that the king Xerxes was 486 to 465, and he probably is the Azarias of Ezra 4 and Esther and the book of Esther. And he did a lot of interesting things. He instituted tax reforms, and he became very powerful. He trained over 2 million warriors for 4 years. He trained 2 million people for 4 years. That's an army in modern terms, let alone these ancient empires. He built special barges and then attacked Greece in 480 BC, crossed the Hellespont in 7 days. And this attack laid the basis for the vendetta that Alexander would capitalize on to go after Persia later. But this is part of the, and we could spend a lot of time talking about Xerxes. He was a very capricious, fanciful character. But, and the mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And this is an allusion to the rise of the Greeks, which we've talked about in Daniel 8 and so on. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. We covered, this is again a summary of what we covered in chapter 8. And not to his posterity. In other words, it wasn't his descendants that took the empire. Usually that's the way, right? The sons or the sons, whatever, or those that marry the daughters, whatever. No, this is not posterity here. And not to his posterity. No, it went primarily to some of his school chums. Guys that had been loyal to him through all the escapades and so forth, Lysimachus and Ptolemy particularly. Nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. Indeed, that's part of the problem. There's a lot of crossfire here. He died. Alexander died without a qualified heir. His half-brother was mentally defective, so that didn't work. He had two sons, one illegitimate by a concubine and others. But anyway, 22 years of fighting followed his death, and these 4 generals end up dividing it up. And there's at least a legend that when he was on his deathbed, they said, to whom does the empire go? He says, give it to the strong. There's an invitation for a chicken race, huh? So 4 generals divide. Again, we've been